Welcome to the latest business video from the North East and Yorkshire Business Network on LinkedIn. Now, today I want to talk about the forthcoming scheme introduced by Rishi Sunak to help employers. It's called the New Job Support Scheme. Now, the reason I want to talk about it is that one of the people I work with, Sharon Lane, who runs Tees Components on Teesside, was one of the first employers to signal a potential problem with the scheme. I personally like the scheme, but this problem she's identified is real. Let's look at the tweet she put out a couple of days after the scheme was announced. This is what she said. Sharon writes about a hypothetical worker called Alex. Alex works 30 hours per week, £15 per hour, earns £450 per week. Under the job support scheme, she can now work 10 hours paid by the employer. The remaining 20 hours are paid at £10 an hour, £5 from the government and £5 for the employer. She now earns £350 a week, plus the cost to the employer of 10 hours work, that's £250, i.e. £25 an hour. Is that right? And can she work elsewhere? Very interesting question. Sharon was the first employer I'd seen on social media put that question. Sharon, have you any idea what the answer is to your question?
Well, my understanding is that my interpretation of it was correct, so those figures would be accurate and they would work. And I'm not sure if there is any restriction on that person being employed somewhere else during that period of time that they're not at work as well. So as far as I'm aware, that is entirely possible if someone's able to do that, as of course they have been on the furlough scheme as well. It
would strike me that this is a scheme contributing to the employer's costs, not to the employee's costs. So if the employee need to make up hours by, I don't know, working in a bar, should such a thing be open, then they could do that because the government isn't actually subsidising them personally, they're subsidising the job.
Yeah, I think it's a classic example where you can see the idea behind it is absolutely fair. The idea is you get paid for the time that you're working. The time that you're not able to work because we don't have work for you at the moment, the employer takes a third of the hit, the government takes a third of the hit, and you take a third of the hit. And you can completely see why, in principle, that is a very fair offer. But in practice, when you calculate it out, it doesn't necessarily appear to be such a good solution for employers.
We can see from the backdrop behind you, you're in manufacturing and you have to work out the cost of everything in manufacturing. A little calculation wrong on a widget here or a widget there, and the thing balloons out of control. In the principle of this scheme means that you might improve your cash situation, but the price of that is increasing your hourly rate. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think that there is very much a place for this. I think that it could be very helpful, but I think it's really clear to understand the limitations and how those figures work out. As a bridge in the short term for a job that you are confident is a long-term viable job, I think it is really quite helpful to have that option. We all understand that the furlough scheme couldn't continue as it was, had to be replaced by something, and no blanket scheme for all sectors, for all employers of all different sizes across the country is going to be right. There's no way of doing that, really.
I'm going to ask you the big question at the end, which is, are you going to take advantage of the scheme? But before I get to that, I just compliment you in being ahead of the game. This is the Financial Times, which was printed a couple of days, or 4 days after your tweet, and it's Professor Michael Devereux, who is the director of Oxford University Centre for Business Taxation, who writes the new scheme is in fact a huge new tax on employers who rehire workers at less than their normal hours. For an employee working 1/3 of normal hours, the scheme requires the employer to pay 55% of normal hours. That is a tax on the employer of 67% of the hourly wage. So you got it right first, straight in there, and Oxford University backs you up. Let's turn to Dan Cooper from Ryecroft Glenton. Now, Dan, what do you make of what Sharon's been saying?
It's absolutely correct. I think when we go back to the job retention scheme, started off with a huge support, at that 80% level. And as we've seen over the months, it is phasing out, which is allowing employers to stabilise themselves and actually not be hit with a huge cost as staff start to come back. So, we're seeing that drop to 60% this month. Going into the new job support scheme, it's that extra step now where employers are starting to take a bit of the hit but still avoiding redundancy. The questions that I've been having from clients is exactly the same as Sharon. Is this actually going to be costing me more for actually my staff working less? And yeah, the figures do show that. But again, it's that phasing back and actually not taking that absolute 100% hit of staff costs. There had to be a new scheme. As I say, the furlough scheme, as we knew it, couldn't continue. And hopefully this is a scheme which is going to work and, to allow redundancies to be avoided. I think that's sort of the key here. We don't want to see redundancies. We're potentially going to go into a second phase of this, and this scheme hopefully will allow employers to maintain their current workforce, which I think we'll all agree the workforce that we all have are the one that we want to continue with and want to be with us still as we come out of this.
Big sweeping statement there, Dan. You're probably right on the numbers, but I think in the way the coronavirus is working, different members of the workforce are having different challenges as productivity issues are being measured. But nevertheless, I remember at the very height of the problem, way back in March, April, you were offering employers the chance to process their furlough claims. And I was one of those employers. You processed my claim. It didn't cost a lot of money, but I know you were swamped. Are you able to deliver a similar service for the new job support scheme? Can you help employers to process the paperwork and get that off their desks?
Absolutely. I think, the key for any advisor is making sure that they give the right advice, they're able to supply the right calculations, and make sure that, an employer isn't seen falling short of actually making inaccurate claims, which, as we all see in the press, furlough is becoming a watched area at the moment. So absolutely, we can do that.
I've got to admit, I feel reassured because I didn't want to plough through the paperwork at the same time as getting on with trying to keep my business going. And you look at all the news reports and think, oh, did I do the paperwork right? And then I think, oh no, actually I gave it to Dan Cooper at Ryecroft Glenton. Don't worry about that. Thank you very much. Now, Dan, thank you for that. And I'm sure you'll get lots of people asking you to help out. Going to Sharon for the last question in this. I'm thinking of availing myself of it for maybe one job, no more. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, with what we do, we actually 40% of our operatives are former apprentices of our business, and we're so highly skilled and we're so reliant on that we will always work to do absolutely everything we can to avoid any redundant positions and to hold on to our skilled people that we've invested so much in over the years. So I think that this scheme will be really helpful. I think we will use it to a small extent. And of course, that is also in conjunction with the £1,000 retention payment, which is coming early next year for anyone who's previously been on furlough. So those two things together, I think, really do help manage the risk for business owners.
Dan, do you have an answer to the other part of Sharon's question about the employer, or is the employee, or are the rules not yet clear enough to know if they can take part-time work to back up their lost income?
I think they're not absolutely clear, but the one thing I would say, I think it goes back down to the employer. I think an employer will grant or will not grant the employee to work elsewhere, whether that be in a different area completely, having a night shift in a bar or something like that. So that's the only thing I would say at this point. But anything around the contractual terms of an employee, definitely speak to your HR advisor or employment lawyer. Dan Cooper, Sharon Lane, thank you for joining us, and stay watching this channel on LinkedIn, the North East and Yorkshire Business Group. If you're watching this video on my own feed, then join the group if you work in private sector business.